What is Icarus? Icarus was developed by the Holm Center as a wargame, with the goal of teaching leadership, teamwork, micro and macro planning for mission units, as well as acting as an enjoyable training environment. Ultimately, you're reaching for what the US Air Force is reaching for: air supremacy. How do you play Icarus? Well, let's start with the basics. First of all, the field. There are two identical courts facing each other, one for each team. On the far left is a blue rectangle. This is the Combined Air Operations Center, or CAOC, and it's where you get your assignments during the game. In the middle is your three-pronged defensive airspace, or DAS. Above and below the DAS are green squares. Those are your bases. That's where the offensive and defensive counter-air units get their ammunition. Finally, at the far front of your airspace are the three surface-to-air missile sites. At the bottom of both fields is a gray box. This is the graveyard. Notice all of the triangles on the field. Each orange triangle is a cone, and each cone is a part of that installation. If you knock down all the cones for an installation, that place is no longer usable for the rest of the game. 1 cone per SAM site, 2 cones wipe out a base, and 3 cones obliterate the enemy's CAOC. Now that we've talked about the field, let's talk about the actual units and gameplay of Icarus. Every CAOC has a Joint Forces Air Component Commander, or JFAC. They're the ones who assign every other unit a position. Once the JFAC gives someone an assignment, they must first run to the purple cone in the DAS, touch it, and then they may proceed to their jobs. JFACs cannot leave the CAOC. SAMs must stay at their squares until they have fired their weapon. 1 foot must be within the square space. Their job is to act as the first defense against incoming attackers. Offensive counter-air units must go out into enemy airspace and attack the enemy structures. Defensive counter-air units must stay within the DAS and stop enemy OCAs from entering. If you are killed in battle, you must go to the graveyard for whatever PT the ref deems appropriate. Then you return to the CAOC for reassignment. Logistics Readiness Officers, or Loggies, are in charge of retrieving and stocking the weapons. They take OCA and DCA weapons to bases, and all SAM weapons to the CAOC. If both cones on a base are knocked over, that base is no longer usable. If a base is rendered unusable, a Loggie must restock it full of weapons, but those weapons are now out of commission and cannot be used. Beware, losing one of your bases means that you have lost a massive chunk of your offensive and defensive capabilities. If a SAM site cone is knocked over, that site is completely unusable for the rest of the game. SAMs cannot be killed, but once they fire their weapon, they must return to the CAOC. If the JFAC dies by an enemy attack, the next available unit becomes the new JFAC. Loggies cannot die from attack and are the only units on the field that can carry 2 weapons at any given time. At this point, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, that's all very well and dandy, but how does my Air Force beat their Air Force and win the battle? The referee of the match establishes how long the opposing air forces have to achieve air superiority. Within that time, cones knocked down count for points, and those points are as follows: 1 point for each SAM cone, 3 points for each base destroyed, 2 points for each CAOC cone hit. Air superiority can be reached by either A, destroying both enemy bases, or B, destroying the enemy CAOC. Achieving air superiority counts another 3 points towards your total. If neither of those 2 goals is reached, then the Air Force with the most points wins. Finally, remember that this isn't some silly game like soccer or football. If the referee makes a call, it's final.